Talking about climate change is one of the most important actions that we can take as individuals to build a movement for change. In discussing climate change with people, the most important thing to remember is to relate climate change to something that people already care about and to listen to what they have to say about it. However, in my time talking about climate change, I've come across a couple arguments that just aren't very convincing and in some ways are really problematic and pushing the movement back from where it should be going. So here are 5 arguments that I think we should phase out, just like the end of the fossil fuel era. Number 1, humans are the Earth's virus. We are the problem. While these phrases have surged in popularity over the past year, coupled with videos of dolphins returning to their habitats, this phrase has been an invasive species environmental discourse for much, much longer. The main issue with both of these phrases is they put a generalized blame on all of humanity for climate change, when in reality, the data show that a handful of wealthy decision makers and powerful decision makers are really to blame in causing the mess that we're in. The climate essayist Mary Annies Heglar, who I follow very closely, and if you watch this channel, you know that I'm a little obsessed with her work, often reminds her viewers and listeners that as a descendant of enslaved people in the United States, that her people and her ancestors aren't the ones who are responsible for creating this mess. And so when you implicate all of that into we, it's not only inaccurate, but it places the blame where it shouldn't be. Similar stories ring true across the planet as we see over and over again that wealthier people in industrialized nations contribute much more to the emissions pie than anyone else. There's also a much more sinister turn that this phrase can easily lead into, and that is, well, I'm not going to say the word on my channel because I don't want those people in my comment section. The basic premise is that they believe that population control is the key to solving our climate crisis. And with the rise of far-right ideologies across the globe and this already stewing bed of xenophobia and hate, we really don't want to lead any credibility to the argument that we are the virus because it just feeds into that idea. Well, undoubtedly, humans are causing the changing climate, not all humans. So it's better to just keep these generalizations away and get rid of this phrase. Number 2, climate change is the great equalizer. While it's true that humanity and the majority of species on this planet are at risk of a 6th mass extinction if we do nothing to act on climate, the impacts in the short term and what we're dealing with right now are far from equal. Those in less wealthy nations with access to less capital are going to be the first and most impacted by the coming climate crisis. According to Tara Law in Time magazine, developing countries, places with widespread poverty, and countries with ineffective governments sometimes face the gravest risk from a changing climate, and are usually poorly equipped to find ways to prepare for and prevent environmental threats. The term coined to explain this inequity is climate apartheid. The denial of the climate change as the great equalizer, and really the fault of it, is that it de-links these issues of social equity from climate change action, which can lead to people not really supporting a full initiative like a just transition that deals with climate change, healthcare, jobs, and social inequalities. So let's just take this phrase and put it in the compost. 3. If we all do X, then we can solve climate change. We must all advocate for X. There is no one solution to solving our climate crisis. There's plenty of tools in our toolbox, from stopping overfishing, to switching to renewable sources of energy, to retrofitting buildings. The most common, the if we do X, then we can solve it, that I hear is about veganism. Now, I've been vegan for about 2 years, vegetarian for about 4, and right now I'm personally just vegetarian because it's a better fit for my lifestyle and where I'm living at the moment. And so I do understand the point of eating plant-based, and I do it as much as possible, but that's not an option for everyone. What I found with veganism is that a lot of people misrepresent the statistics and that plant-based eating has a bigger impact than it does. Don't get me wrong, it does have a big impact, and if you can switch, you should. But veganism won't solve the climate crisis. A more personal example of this, if this then that, is when I first started this channel, I was really against flying and thought anyone who ever flew in a plane was insane if they understood what was happening with our planet. And over time, I realized that that kind of thinking and these really pushing for lifestyle changes is just, it's not very effective in getting people to change their mind. climate. A new study by Georgia State University surveying Americans on climate messages found messages that imply the need for individual sacrifices in living style that will be required to reduce emissions are thus translated into a negative response to the entire message, including an increased skepticism about climate science and trust in climate scientists. Remember that America is an exceptional country, an outlier in most situations, so take this study with a grain of salt. Obviously needs to be more input here, but that takeaway is really important, is that we can't keep evangelizing on one issue thinking that people will change how they're living. Let's put these arguments in a little box, put them up in the corner, and maybe stop telling everyone that they need to go vegan. Number 4, we've passed the tipping point. There's no point left in fighting. This one just isn't scientifically true. There isn't one tipping point where the world just explodes. There are several tipping points that we need to keep our eyes on, like the Arctic ice sheets, the biodiversity loss. And as long as I'm on this planet, no matter the degrees risen, I'm gonna be fighting for a climate just world. Because it's not about stopping climate change, it's about mitigating. It's not about solving, it's about slowing. It's a spectrum, a sliding scale. If it's not this point of degrees, it's the next one. And it's a continual fight. One thing that I found here is that people who often say this have lost hope. And hope is a fickle emotion. And I found that putting my activism in rage or perseverance or righteousness is a much more effective way of not losing sight of the beautiful word that could be in a climate just society and not getting discouraged by the really, really bad news. Number 5, social justice needs to wait. Climate change is the most important issue we should all be laser focused on. Last but definitely not least, climate justice is racial justice, is social justice, is economic justice. We can't take these apart. And I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, so we'll push it over to Varshini Prakash, who is the co-founder of the Sunrise Movement, for her words. And so to me, the very reason why we have the climate crisis is because we have inequality. And the effect is that communities of color and poor people are disproportionately affected by the impact of the climate crisis as well. There's no way to actually disentangle these things. And a common retort to this idea is, well, people are dying of climate change. They're dying right now. Which can be said of lots of other social ills as well, like famine and war and police violence. So to think that maybe it is the most prime reason for you and the most close thing to you for death, but for many people around the world, it just isn't. And when we're taking that view, we're saying that the issues that you're fighting for don't matter, when really we should be building a coalition for a justice movement. I'll link a great article down below about the converging crises this year. What arguments have you found leave a sour taste in your mouth? And how do you take your arguments and talk to your family and friends about climate change? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.